And this is where I would recommend nobody ever do this. We negotiate.
Tip of the day from Morgan.
Don't do this.
Don't do this. Warning label has been given.
We negotiated for an amendment to the purchase agreement to allow our crews to start construction during escrow.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Evolve Your Brand podcast. I'm your host, Ollie Amirkhiz. Just want to give a huge shout out to Icon Industries, Shane times 3, because you love yourself that much. You have to go get 2 other people with your name. Steven, I named the eel after you because I don't want you to be the only Steven here. The rest of the crew here, we can't do any of this without you. Without further ado, Morgan Hampel on. Thanks so much for joining us.
Ollie, it's
Amber and Hampel.
Hammer and Hampel.
Hampel. I said it so fast. I'm so excited about saying hammer. I'm like, Hammer and Hampel.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Excited to be here. Really appreciate you having me on.
Buddy, I think I've known you for less than a month.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you're one of the best people I've met so far this year. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, it feels like we've known each other for a while, though.
It does. It does. Yeah. And it might have something to do with my poor Vikings. They need a quarterback.
We do.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
That'll be the fun.
We'll find out next week, right? Perhaps next week.
We're gonna have to get together.
Yeah.
I've been telling. I told Luke about you. I'm like, you got to meet my buddy Morgan.
Yeah, we can. We can cry about the Vikings together.
We could.
Trauma
could.
bond.
But do you think that's what they want to hear?
No.
We're gonna get to it. First, thank you for your service.
Appreciate it.
You're active duty, and you're a badass active duty. Because that's not the only thing you do. What else do you do?
Yeah, I wear a few hats. Active duty being one of them. Active duty Navy coming up on 10 years. And then I started a syndication almost 4 years ago with a good friend of mine, Hammer and Hampel. We buy multifamily assets throughout the country. And then we're doing our first development project right now here in San Diego.
Yeah. And it's sweet.
It's cool.
It's cool.
I'm really excited about it.
You know what I'm excited about is as it progresses along, just see the evolution of it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited because it's the excitement that you talk about that project. And I do, when we get to that point, I'm excited for you to share. How much of that project can you share today?
A decent amount.
Good.
So essentially we are restoring a Prohibition era. Back then it was a brothel and a speakeasy, but it's zoned and entitled to be a hotel, restaurant, bar. So we are restoring the boutique hotel and we're going to build out the cold shell for a restaurant bar operator coming downstairs. So we'll operate 2nd through 4th floors as an owner operator hotel and then have a restaurant bar downstairs.
Have you ever done a project like this?
This capacity, no. This is our first one. But
okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about this project?
I'm a 12 out of 10 excited.
Sweet.
It is. It's our first sexy asset. Like the rest of our.
What did you say?
It's our first sexy asset.
Oh shit! All right.
The rest of our stuff is vanilla, Wonder Bread, Midwest, tried and true, cash on cash, workforce housing. Like, it's great. It's a great investment. We're still investing in it. We're looking for new assets to buy. But if you see a picture of these, or if you it's not knocking your socks off with excitement. The financial statements will, but the
right.
but the pictures won't. For this, hopefully it's both.
Well, we are a show of brand. So I'm really, really excited.
I'll have to show you the branding too. We just got our branding back.
Oh,
it's exciting. It is. Oh,
we might have to do when your boutique hotel opens up. We might have to do Evolve Your Brand on location.
Yeah. 2025.
I'm just saying. I'm down for that.
Yes, sir.
On location. That would be fun. Morgan, let's talk about your journey in the Navy. There was a couple of things when we were talking about offline. You said there's a lot of lessons that you're grateful for, for your time in the military. And You're getting ready. You got a big event coming up.
Yep.
What's going to happen in July?
I transition out of active duty July 31st.
Okay. So let's talk about like what made you decide to join the Navy. How's your experience been? What are some of the things that you're going to take away as you get ready to transition to the next journey?
So I always wanted to serve growing up. Some of the biggest impacts for me were my dad and grandfather on my mom's side served, but then the biggest impact I'd say would be my grandfather on my dad's side was a Holocaust survivor. And seeing the pictures of him being liberated and the forces that did that, and hearing his stories as a kid growing up made me want to. And plus, like being in sports and whatnot, I always had a need to be a part of something bigger. Where, you know, as a kid, it's, you know, baseball, football, basketball. But then as you grow up, it becomes, you know, bigger than sports. Went to college, pursued an engineering degree, had a couple internships, and just I landed my dream internship, and I got there and I hated every minute of it. I was working on cool stuff, high tech stuff, but I was staring at the clock, working with people who were staring at the clock right next to me, and there was no camaraderie. So after that, I knew I needed to look into military programs, and commissioned through OCS to become a nuclear surface warfare officer. So I was working on aircraft carriers as a nuclear engineer. And then
that's not cool at all. I mean, like, I just love how he's like, yeah, I was just on a boat, like the nuclear stuff. That's what I do. It's all good. Like every day.
It's amazing what $20 will
do. You know, a good friend of ours, Jay Johnson, was here earlier, and I said, don't ever trust me with the long codes. He's like, I definitely wouldn't. I would not be the person to handle I'm too irresponsible. That's pretty cool.
It paid the bills.
Right.
High highs, low lows. But I think it's the smartest thing I ever did. Really found out who I was as a man.
And who are you as a man? Like, what did you learn about yourself in your time?
I learned how I handle stress. I learned how I handle people. I learned how to take care of people. I learned how not to take care of people. It's funny. My job title is a nuclear surface warfare officer, but I swear I spent more time as a therapist than doing, you know, because at its peak, I was in charge of a division of 70, right?
Wow.
And I was 24, 25 years old, right? And I'm getting asked for advice on all this life stuff that I haven't even been through, you know. 24, 25 years old, you're pretty young, married, no kids, and I'm helping people go through like divorces and custody battles. Meanwhile, we're in the middle of the North Arabian Sea or the Gulf, and we're launching jets, responding to whatever we're responding to out in Afghanistan. But I'm dealing with all these personnel issues, trying to make sure my guys' heads on straight, and they're, you know, all right between the ears, so we can, you know, execute the mission. And so you learn a lot about that when, I mean, you get your qualification, but nobody's qualified to handle this kind of stuff. You should step up, right? And you have to figure it out. And sometimes you give better or worse advice, and you learn so much along the way just from the people you work who technically work for you, right? But I'd always tell my folks that you may report to me, but I work for you, right? And because of that, you know, I had a really good rapport, and we had some success on deployment and within our division. And I learned how to take care of other people and putting other people first. And my success as an officer was built on the success of my people, right? And I don't learn that at that age unless I'm thrown into the fire like the Navy does, right? And then on an entrepreneurial sense, there's three things that I think are required. And I stole this from a Malcolm Gladwell book, but I'm claiming it as my own now. that you need for a rewarding or a meaningful life. And it's human connections, challenging environment, and autonomy. And the military does an outstanding job of the first two and provides zero effort in helping out with the third, right? And so a lot of my decision in coming down to like whether or not I wanted to make the military a career or not, I was able to finally come to terms with when I was able to frame it in that light, because the military will only ever be able to provide for those first two buckets. And so this is where real estate and entrepreneurship come in, right? Because I mean, I have a good problem to have where I have an education, a good background in the nuclear engineering field with leadership experience through the Navy. But if I get out of the military and end up doing that, I'll just be trading a, high paid, high time consuming, high stress job for another that provides human connections, challenging environment, and still no autonomy. Right. So, and you don't really realize the importance of autonomy until it's stripped away. Right. But also you realize the importance of, at least for me, the importance of human connections and being in a field where I can work with a team, I can work and help people, I can lead people, and also be led, right? Everybody's a leader and a follower in their own circles. And the ones who fail to see that usually, I don't like hanging around, right? Even, CEOs of massive companies and people you look up to, they look up to people too. And if they don't, then I wouldn't personally look up to them anymore.
Okay.
Right. Because it shows that they're not looking to grow themselves, right? They're satisfied, right? And people that I'm trying to surround myself with are never satisfied. And it's not about never being, it's not about never being satisfied, because you have to enjoy the process, right? But if success is not a location, it's, it's the road.
It's not a destination. It's not a journey.
It's a journey, right? And people who you think have made it, right? And if the second you think you've made it, it's all going to reset, right? And I want to surround myself with mentors who are looking to grow themselves and looking to help other people, but then also looking to learn, right? And I'm a huge believer in the sense that any room I walk into, there's something I could teach somebody, and there's also something I can learn from somebody, right? And those are the people that I like to be around, because then there's a synergy there, there's mutual benefits there, and it's just a matter of establishing a sense of connectedness where you can figure out how can I help you and how can you help me. And that's how you build really great relationships. And these are just some of there was no better environment to learn this than being, 22 years old, thrusted into deployment, like fresh out of college. And now all of a sudden I'm responsible for the livelihoods of, at the smallest, 8 people, at the most 70 people, right? You get put into certain situations with stuff you've technically trained for, but you don't feel like you're ready for it, but it doesn't matter because, it's time to jump off, right? But along the way, you're surrounded with people who are making sure that you're not going to mess up to a point of no return. And then you're doing the same thing for other people, right? And you see that balance of intrapersonal care for each other, both all the way up and down the chain of command, that when I get out of the military, I want to make sure I maintain that within my own circle.
That's incredible, because so much of what you reference is like you've actually taken the time to gain perspective on how you've gotten better in the military, and how you're going to apply those. When you look at the responsibility of the people that serve under you, it really is about having those winning relationships. It's a win-win relationship.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of that in like the real estate or just in life? Do you see a lot of people that, and I love how you said, I know how to pick my people. So is that one of your standards, is you surround yourself with people that want to see you win as bad as you want to see them win?
You try to, right? Yeah. Obviously it's hard to bat 1,000 there, but you definitely try to, and it's easy to spot it when you're looking for it.
Okay.
Right.
What do you look for?
Integrity, integrity, honesty, hard work. Honestly, integrity and hard work are two of the most important things, right? I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be honest with me, good, bad, or ugly, right? I need you to call me out when I messed up, and I need you to be honest when you mess up, right? And so even in like the real estate world now, anybody on the general partnership side, unless they're personally managing it, the definition of a good operator is not, it's their ability to manage their property managers.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing here. Right. On the ship, I was in charge of all my nuclear mechanics. They're the ones who are, fixing, operating, making sure our gear's up to go to run the reactor, do all the things that we need to do for reactor safety, launch jets, put warheads on foreheads. Right. I get a lot of the credit for that because I'm in charge of them and they report to me, but they're the ones doing all the hard work. Right. I'm at the 30,000 foot level. In real estate, we've been a lead GP on a little over 300 doors and a co-GP on a little over 600 unit portfolio in Texas. None of the general partnership, we go visit the property once a quarter, right? The success of the projects, the success of our investors is not due to our labor. And anybody who says so is, I could say some choice words, right? They're
please do. I mean,
but like it's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And not to say that they're not good operators. It's their leaders and they can lead a team, because what I need to know my property management can come to me at any time, any place, any means, right? And that they know that I have their back. And I trust them, they trust me, and this is a team. They get paid. The better the property does, the more they get paid. The more they get paid, the more we get paid, and it trickles down to our investors, right? But if we don't have that camaraderie and that sense of team, and we understand that we're in this together and we sink and swim together, the project's going to suffer, right? And so the labor and the skill as an operator, as a general partner, isn't on, like, yes, you have to know the real estate industry. You have to be able to speak the language, implement the business plan, but the brass tacks is your property manager. That it will sink, or that will sink any project if it's done improperly. And you could have the best property management group ever, but if you don't know how to manage them and you don't know how to set them up for success and like empower them to do a good job, then they'll screw up any business plan.
Right.
Right. And so it's, in the end, it's all people. It's just taking care of people and like showing them that you care and showing them that you are invested in their success, not just dollars and cents, right? The money will come, right?
You got to care.
You got to care, right? The money will come, right? But
no doubt
it will. So when you take care of people, the people will take care of you and the money will follow.
So how did you and Dan, you've known, talk about you and Dan. And by the way, that's such a cool story, because I'm like, hey, bro, like, how did you come up with Hammer and Hampel? You're like, I'm like, his name is Dan Nelson.
Yeah, it's his last name technically. So so I've known Dan since we were kids, really, middle school, high school. We played football together.
You did play football.
Yeah.
Where'd you play? What position did you play?
I was a wide receiver.
Of course you were. Say cornerback or wide receiver.
Yeah, I was a wide receiver. But so I was a year older than him, but we had different friend groups because of the year gap. But we played football together, and we were had a lot of mutual friends. And as I started getting into real estate, he stepped into real estate right away at a very young age, and I was following him, and he would post on social media the status of his projects, and I reconnected with him back in probably 2016 or so, and we just started keeping in touch. Like we were.
Okay, so you guys reconnected back in 2016.
Yeah, so like we weren't like we knew each other and we were friends in high school, but we were not like we had different friend groups like.
So he wasn't your best friend?
No, not at all. Not at all. We got close as adults through real estate.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was 2016 where he had been syndicating with a large group out of Minneapolis. These guys have about 4,000 units.
Sweet.
Across Texas, Nashville, Kansas City. And these guys are studs. Dan became the garbage disposal for them, essentially. Like, hey, I'll work for free. I just want to learn the business. I'll do anything and everything.
I love Dan.
And so Dan,
haven't met him, but I love him. He worked for free, huh?
He worked for free, and he had a full-time job, and he was like making good money, but like he wanted to learn this side of the business.
So good.
In order to do so, he found a group who was willing to let him see behind the GP curtain for free in trade for, some free labor. And Dan did everything from building the website, investor relations, helping build performance pitch decks, providing info for like whatever it was, he did it all for them, right? And he had, at that point when we reconnected, he had been with them for a couple of years, and it reached that point. Well, Dan's like, well, hey, like I've been doing this for a while. I really appreciate the opportunity. Will you guys bring me on like formally as a general partner? And back then, those guys were still growing, so they said thanks, no thanks, which is fine, right? They agreed, the value he had provided, and now it's understandable that he wanted more because of all the time, blood, sweat, and tears he put into it. At that same time, I was going through the beginning of my real estate journey. We reconnected around the same time, and very complementary skill sets. I know him, I know his family, I know, the integrity, hard work, like I know he checks those boxes. And then, most importantly, and oftentimes overlooked, is just goals, like overall long-term goals. And we both had like very high standards, very high goals. We hold ourselves to, equally high standards for all that. And then we decided to jump in together after a few years of just like keeping in touch in 2020. And now we're approaching, 1,000 units between stuff we've been a lead or co-GP on, and now we're in the development game.
You guys are at 1,000 doors?
300
Almost?
as 300 as a lead, and just under 700 as a partner. As a co-GP, yeah.
In 3 years?
Just under 4 years.
You should really step up your, when are you going to actually start getting some results? When you told me that, I'm like, all right, so you got into real estate and just went into multifamily syndication. Awesome. And it really,
well, technically I did a single family home, then a 3-unit where I got my teeth kicked in to break even for 2 years.
Okay.
And then syndication. So our deal flow was my deal flow, and then there's a merger with Dan in there. It goes 1, 3, 1, 68, 106, 136, and then a 3, 200 plus asset portfolio.
It started with 1 though.
It started with 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the 3.
And then, a brutal 3-unit.
Yeah, I know. So we can go from like, we'll start with the 3-unit. We're going to call it the 3-unit story. This is going to be the short. It's going to be awesome. What not to do. Everybody has that. And then I want to hear the fucking cool project. The sexy.
Yeah.
Let's do that. How does Dan make you better? You say you guys are very complimentary of each other. You speak incredibly highly of him. I feel like I kind of have some insight into the guy already. Like, how does he make you better every day?
He is it's funny. We complement each other in a lot of different ways. So he's a lot of the sales guy. His main job right now is residential sales. So he's constantly negotiating, constantly like people facing type stuff. Right. And I do that, but on a much more, personal level, just through my job. Needless to say, he's got the sales stuff down, capital raising. I raise capital too, but definitely lean on him for that. Where I'm much more a numbers guy with the engineering background. I'm in the weeds, peeling back all the layers of the onion, trying to build a business plan. And he has that experience, which is nice from his days at the other syndication, right? So we can bounce off each other and refine the business plan as we go. So he's external, I'm internal on that side. I'm the optimist, he's the pessimist. So I'm constantly saying, hey, I think there's an opportunity here, deal. And he's the one to shoot it down.
But you're also the numbers person. Like you're breaking down the numbers. Okay,
yeah, but
that's interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
But just so this is where so I'm the numbers guy, but like when you're underwriting, you can underwrite yourself in or out of a deal.
1,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of an emotional aspect to it, and I can get emotional. Right. So I'll say like, hey, at this could pencil. Right. And then I'll run it by him. It's like, well, so you have the most likely, least conservative, most conservative. And you try to figure out like what is like, where are we going to end up? Where's our offer going to be? What's the likelihood of being able to actually execute this? Because debt isn't secured yet. Equity isn't secured yet. Right. And so I tend to be on the side of like, hey, how can we make this work?
Right.
I think there's
optimism.
Like I think there's opportunity here. And then he'll come in and he's much more of like, nothing is a deal until proven a deal. Right. Which is good. Right.
That's great.
And so we complement each other on that end. When it comes to sticking to timelines and punctuality and like all the things we need to provide lenders, investors and whatnot, dude, my anxiety is ramped up to 11. I'm just like constantly forcing deadlines, trying to meet deadlines, pushing things, which is good to a certain extent, but I'm also providing unnecessary pressure at some times where Dan will be like, hey dude, like, relax, we have leverage here, we don't need to force this issue, or like, hey, thanks for the reminder here, I'll get right on it. Right. So I'm like
you're very task.
Yeah. And plus like the military training, like, dude, when it comes to like being on time, organization, everything teed up, ready to go, like that is me. And
I'm in heaven right now.
And so, and like Dan he'll let me run my stuff like that. But then also when I'm going overboard, I'm like, dude, you're applying like unnecessary stress and pressure on us when we really have X, Y, and Z. Right. And so he calls it realtor time. Right. And so like he applies a little realtor time to the stuff that doesn't need to be as like stringent black and white where I can.
You're black and white.
Where I can operate. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome that you have, and I think there's a high level of trust too, because like when somebody that you trust wholeheartedly checks you, you're like, all right, hold on,
yeah,
take a break,
yeah,
and it makes you better too. So,
yeah. And so like so I've learned a ton from him on that like personality and tendency check side, but also like he's a negotiating wizard. Right. And so like I'll create the environment, put all the chess pieces in place, and then I unleash the dogs, being Dan.
What is it about his negotiation? And that's something that I've learned over the years in real estate, like how much it does matter from a negotiation perspective to get a deal. You want a win-win. But sometimes not every deal is going to be a win-win. What does he do that you're so impressed with as far as a negotiator?
So one thing that his experience brings that my background doesn't. So there's a lot of similarities between residential sales negotiations and commercial sales negotiations.
Okay.
There are nuances that are very different just due to size, scale, rules, regulations, obviously in the commercial versus residential space. But the grand scheme of buyer, seller, debt, equity, the contents of a purchase agreement, a lot of it's the same, right? So, for instance, average home price I'll pump up Dan's tires quick. Average home price in Minneapolis is like 400, 450, that ballpark, right?
I'll take it.
A little different than
sold.
Little different than San Diego, right?
Let's move to Minnesota.
Him and his team did like 30 million in volume last year.
Really?
Yeah. And so he's done.
So he is doing residential.
Yeah. So so that's the legs that feeds the beast for us. Right. And needless to say, that's a lot of high quantity transactions, right? So he's seen so many scenarios of debt issues, equity issues, like different
especially now.
Yeah. Different buyer seller, like things or contingencies that come up and red flag, like all these different scenarios he's seen, right? And so he can pull from that experience and really apply it in our negotiations. I mean, we got started in 2020. Like we sat down and said, hey, we're going to go do this, call it November 2020. We had our first deal under contract March 2021. It was the first deal we ever put an offer in on. which was not it was as much as it was the plan. It was not the plan. We were not expecting to get that first deal.
November 2020?
November 2020 is when we started.
Right.
We had our first deal under contract March 2021. And we had to raise $1 million.
And that was the Indiana? Iowa. Sorry. Yeah. I knew it was one of the I's.
Yeah, that was so 68 units. We raised $1 million.
Yeah.
And
during COVID.
During COVID. Wow. Yeah. 2021. March 2021.
Crazy.
So like kind of peak, post peak. Like,
I mean, it's within a year because
it was in the thick
COVID.
Of it,
yeah, it was in the thick of it.
Yeah, like when we did our property inspection.
What I mean, like, you know what I mean? That what a perfect time.
It was crazy.
The world is shut down. Let's go into multifamily syndication.
Yeah, right.
And raise $1 million. And
well, dude, I got to replace my income by the time I get out of the Navy, and July 2024 was down the pipe. So
you made So it was 2019. When did you make the decision you were going to leave?
Around the time that I realized that Dan and I had something going.
Nice. Okay. So it made your decision easier.
Yeah, definitely. Because I wanted to know that like I didn't have to use my fallback I didn't have to use it. Right. Because I mean,
what was your fallback?
I mean, it's going with what my education is.
Oh,
nuclear engineering. I have a master's in industrial engineering. Like, it's a good position. It's a good problem to have because, like,
you have options.
I have options, right? And I can get a good salary somewhere, like if I need to. But also, like, if I'm using that for something, then something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we got that property. We closed June 2021. Got that property up, stabilized, started giving out distributions. I mean, I told you that whole backstory at.
You did. It was crazy, how you fronted
We fronted construction costs.
You don't recommend that though.
I don't. I highly.
You highly not recommending that.
When you're not sure you can raise capital, and you're not sure you can operate a deal, and you're not sure of all this stuff. Yeah, but we bet on ourselves, and fortunately, we won that bet. So it paid off, right? But like I was saying, of all the choices you can make, very few will be. 1% will be life change. Less than 1% will be life changing home runs. Less than 1% will be life crippling defeats. Odds are you'll land somewhere in the middle. Right. And so we did, fortunately. Right. But needless to say, we started giving out distributions in closed June, started distributions in August. September, we got our second property under contract, 106 units, raised $2 million, closed December 2021. So in 2021, we had 142 units, had $3 million in equity under management, and we're off to the races. And we had been in business 1 year. Yeah.
When you say that,
it's chaos
out loud. Now.
Yeah.
2024. If you would have told yourself in you're going to get all this done, and then you're going to sit on a podcast in 2024 and talk about this, what would you have said?
No way.
Really?
No, I don't.
It's crazy.
It didn't happen by accident.
Right.
But the biggest surprise is raising capital, right? It's this huge voodoo thing in the world, or in this real estate world, right? I would never ever say it's easy. It's not easy, but the barrier to entry is much lower than much lower than advertised, right?
When you do what? Finish that up. The barrier to entry is when you do. What did you and Dan do that made that easier?
We believed in the project, we believed in ourselves, and we had a sound business plan. Right. And I'll go into that story.
Let's go.
So the thing I would never, ever do again, but we did in order to, and who knows if we even had to do it, but we thought we had to do it. Right. So we get the first offer we ever placed, which was
the unicorn.
Mind blowing. Like, we thought, like, all right, we've done our due diligence. We think we have our team in place. Like, let's start placing offers and we'll figure out, what we get. whatever broker is gonna be dumb enough to convince sellers to let the rookies take down the multifamily project.
Because that's very hard to do, because it's not like they're just, do you know what I mean? Because they look at your track record, your experience.
We have none.
None.
And we're honest about it too. Like, you don't want to, like, yeah.
Integrity.
Yeah. And like, our whole sales pitch we are young hustlers. We don't know how we're going to close, but we will. And we guarantee it.
That was the pitch.
Yeah. I mean, we're just like, and like, you get people to like you, right? And you get them invested in your success. Then the brokers will be like, hey, you know what? Like, this guy's offer is the same as this guy's offer. These guys don't have a track record, but like, I really like them. Like,
they're hungry.
Like, if you go with them, like, I can't guarantee they're going to close, but they're guaranteeing it, which like, and then you get a seller who's like, hell yeah. And so like, we wrote like this big letter, like, to the seller. It's like, hey, like, this is who we are, like, photos, background. Like, I went to Iowa State. Like, I'm not from the area, but like, I went to school in the area. Like, you're not selling it to BlackRock. You're selling it to Morgan and Dan. Right. And so you get them invested in our success and our excitement. Right. And then we got it. And we're like, holy crap. Like, we have to raise $1 million by June. Do
you remember when you got it accepted that day?
I remember exactly where I was.
No.
I was in my garage walking around, like, cleaning up, and the broker called Dan and I on a conference call, and he's like, you guys got 90 days. Seller took your offer. And I'm just like trying to contain my excitement, like, as if this was expected. I'm just like, oh, okay. Like
you're being cool, calm, and collected.
I was like, oh, this is great. Awesome. We'll get, do you guys have like a purchase and sale agreement template, or do you want us to draft it up, or like, what's yada, yada, yada? And it's like, oh, like, we got a template, we'll send it. And I'm like, okay, we'll be on the lookout for that. We'll get our red lines and go from there. And then we're like, all right, sounds good. Like, looking forward to, taking this down with you. Right. Seller hangs up, called Dan screaming, like, what is going on? Like, I remember exactly where I was, like, very vividly.
And what was Dan? So you're making the phone call. As soon as you hang up, you're calling Dan. What did Dan say?
We were both going nuts, but then we're just like, all right, we got to figure out how to raise capital.
Yeah, what was that? I was going to say, how quickly holy shit, we got to come up with, how much did you need to come up with?
$1 million.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And then what, you're like, all right. And so what was the next step after that? You guys are through I could literally, I feel like I was there.
Yeah.
Like, your excitement inside the garage had to be mind blowing. You're like, fuck, yes.
I'm like pacing back and forth in the garage yeah. But the next step was, so, I mean, this is obviously our first deal. We have no investor portal, nothing, right? We just have our contact.
So you have no access to capital at this point?
No. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
It's all in our contact list on our phone.
Okay, right.
So, I mean, like, at the up to date, like,
what I'm saying is there was no raised capital, that you already had some of it already.
Correct. We had nothing. We had nothing but what we had, what we personally had.
Right.
Right. And
Holy shit.
So like, we fronted, obviously, like, the earnest money, right? But from there, it was, I mean, up to date. So for the last like 4 months, right? It is how long Dan and I had been in business at this time. We had been intentionally like curating our contact list and figuring out who could be potential investors. So it's not like we were starting from square one, because we had raised $0.
Right.
But I mean, we had been planting the seed with people. It's like, hey, we're looking for deals. Is something you'd be interested in? Yada, yada, yada. And like, that's a mixed bag of people thinking like, oh, like, look, the boys are going to go. They're gonna,
oh, so cute.
And then some people are like, yeah, I'd be interested. So it's like, you're kind of feeling out where people are going to be. But then once we got that deal, it's like, hey, remember that stuff I was telling you about? Like, we got an opportunity. Like, you got 20 minutes to sit down and like kind of talk through what we're looking for, what you're looking for, and see if you'd want to invest, right? But needless to say, we did our first webinar, recorded the webinar, and we had verbal commitments of like $750,000 in 3 days.
Okay.
So
were you shocked?
Shocked.
You're shocked.
So this is where it gets kind of crazy, right? So we had like $750,000 in 3 days, verbal commitments, right? And there's an emphasis on verbal,
Verbal.
right? Because this is where they get you, right? Because when it comes to wiring large sums of money from retail investors, right, and like rightfully, it's a big deal. So I don't want to discount people that balk, right? Because it's a large investment. You're investing in rookie investors, but I would challenge anybody who's thinking about investing to thoroughly think through it before they sign a subscription agreement for the sake of the operators. But needless to say, we're like, oh my God, like raising capital is super easy, yada, yada, yada. We're like going through due diligence and like everything's hunky dory. It's like, we can raise 250.
We can do this. We got this.
Right. And then all of a sudden 600 goes away. And like, we're like,
well, we can't just skip over that. How does 600 just all of a sudden go away?
Our two largest investors backed out. Right. And so now all of a sudden we went from, 80% done to about 15% done with this raise. And we've like been like very, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but it's been a pretty low stress raise up until this point. But meanwhile,
you have 90 days.
Well, a month has gone by, right?
60 days.
Maybe we're down to like 60 days. And so now it's like, oh crap. And so we're trying to figure out, it's like, how can we make this more enticing for potential investors? Right. And this is where we figure it's like, we got to prove how invested we are in this deal. Right. And also, we also have to show that we're going to give their money back via distributions as fast as possible. So, and this is where I would recommend nobody ever do this. We negotiate.
Tip of the day from Morgan.
Don't do this.
Don't do this. Warning label has been given.
We negotiated for an amendment to the purchase agreement to allow our crews to start construction during escrow. So the reason why is of 68 units, there were 18 or 19 units that were vacant. Of those that were vacant, all of them were in horrendous condition and nowhere near rent ready. So we knew we needed to get in there, get those units turned and filled to support cash flow to the point where we can give out distributions as soon as possible. Needless to say, we did about $100,000 worth of renovations during escrow while trying to raise capital we weren't sure we were able to raise. Earnest money is hard. Contractor money is even harder if that's a thing. Like, you're not getting your earnest money back, and you're certainly not getting your contractor money back. And if we don't close, there's incentive for the seller to not put it back on the market because we've helped stabilize the asset for him for free to him.
Because you just invested $100K.
Just because we did it for him. Right. But the thought was like, hey, if we show like, hey, we're actually already implementing the business plan and we're getting these units filled and we're putting in, like, our property management team was also the one responsible for leasing all new units, right? So we had already started the transition process. Needless to say, throughout escrow, we were able to turn and fill a little over half of those units. We closed June 2021, and we gave out our first distribution August 2021. And that is what made us comfortable enough, because we had shown like, hey, we got the property to a point we can give out distributions. There's another project we like, got under contract September 2021, 106 units, raised $2 million on the heels of that first raise, and closed before the close of the year.
Might as well, right?
Might as well.
You had bet.
But it's great. Yeah, but like, had we not raised the capital or not been able to secure the debt, we would have lost $140,000.
Was that the earnest money deposit? And plus the renovations, you have 40 plus the 100.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about rolling. I mean, you went all in.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I can't even imagine how much anxiety. How did you deal with the anxiety and the stress of, like, you've never done this before?
Carefully. Carefully. I wish I had a better answer, but carefully.
Were you during this period of time, were you on deployment, or what was happening?
No. So the reason why I was able to do all this while on active duty was I had just transferred to my current duty station, which is teaching at the University of San Diego. I'm one of the ROTC instructors, which is a very busy job. But unlike my previous duty stations throughout my career, like I have my own office, I have consistent access to internet, and I'm not underway and not deploying, right? And so like it reflects much more of a 9-to-5 work schedule.
Right.
So I was able to essentially work 2 full-time jobs, and to this day still have been, while teaching, advising all my students who are getting ready to commission, go active duty, and all the drill, PT, the stuff that we have to do. Like I'm able to do all that, but kind of massaging real estate throughout because of the autonomy the teaching gig has.
Well, good for you.
Yeah. Thanks.
What did you learn? Okay, so first deal is done. August, you guys give out your first distributions of that first one, right?
Yep.
Okay. The second one happens. End of the year, 2021. Where are you and Dan at as you go into 2022?
So we just closed on our second deal. So we now have 142 units under management, $3 million in equity.
In 1 year,
about 11 million in total, like AUM. And from there, we had a massive 2021. So it's like 2022. It's like, we got to put some systems in place.
Okay.
Right. So we kind of slowed down a little bit. Right. We brought on, I tapped into USD to get some interns. Right. So I reached out to the School of Business, get some free labor.
Well, it's actually helpful for them too, because they see the cool stuff that you're doing.
Exactly. It's
which we need more finance people. Like they should be doing internships. That's awesome.
Exactly. So we've had an intern ever since 2022, and like we've rolled through them like semester long internships, summer internships. Right. And we've gotten great feedback from them, and we've gotten free labor for us, which has helped us out as we're growing, and trying to stay as lean as possible. So we got investor portals established. We got our reporting systems made and massaged and designed and all that stuff. So we did a bunch of deals, and then we kind of built the foundation. I don't call it the foundation because it's not the foundation, but we built like the systems afterwards, right? Before everything was managed on like Google Sheets and like Excel and infinite emails and whatnot. And then got our third deal under contract June 2022. And this was a big lift, $4.6 million raise for 136 units. And this was also June 2022 was also the very beginning of the interest rate hike.
Yeah, that's when things started to explode.
We had quotes from Freddie Mac because we got this under contract in June. We had our initial quotes from Freddie Mac in May as part of our underwriting. And I was underwriting like 4%. And it's somewhere between like 3.9 and 4.25 interest rate, right? Get under contract, negotiating the purchase agreement. I remember we signed. I remember this very vividly. We signed our purchase agreement after like 2-3 weeks of negotiating on June 6th. We flew out to visit the property on June 8th for our engineering inspection. June 8th, the 10-year went up like 75 basis points.
So you were at 5.25 now?
Yeah. So interest rate went up a full percent underwriting. And we're like, and now Morgan's like, dude, this no longer pencils. Like, we need to do something. I was like, we need to pull out, or I don't know. And this is where Dan's experience came in. And he's like, hey, these guys are in the same environment as we're in. If they go back out to market, they're wasting more time. They have
that's smart.
They have another deal on the back end that they're looking to go into. They're invested in us as a buyer as we are with them as a seller.
Yeah.
Right. And we need to come to an agreement, right? Because we're not making this up. This isn't us raising equity issue or us raising debt issue. It's the 10-year just went up 75 to 100 basis points essentially overnight. something that we did not predict was going to happen. They didn't predict was going to happen, but it's very real. And any new buyer that they bring in is going to be facing the same issues, right? And so we were able to negotiate a $600,000 price reduction during escrow in order to secure to make this thing pencil the way we needed it to for the returns we were promising to our investors.
Yeah. Because you got to deliver, otherwise,
exactly, right.
They're going to pull out.
But that came because we initially bought. Oh wait, there's a whole other aspect of this I'm missing. So this is actually two deals. It's 113 units and a 23 unit, right? So what we did was we initially were under contract for the 113. Let me rewind. We initially placed an offer for 113 units. We found out the seller was also selling 23 units around the corner, but separately, right? But the broker didn't disclose that to us, and for some reason I didn't see it listed online. And so to help make our offer sweeter, because once again, we're not the rookies anymore, but now we're the rookies plus one. Right. So still not like the sexiest buyer out there. But what we did was, since we found out about this after our offer was already in, we amended our offer and we put a blind offer in on the 23 units to combine it as a portfolio, but wrote a caveat making it contingent to our inspection. And if it fails, then we would cut it out. Right. But it allowed us to go in at a higher price point, a lower cost per door, and one transaction for the seller. So we were able to get it under contract, all 136 units, did our inspection, we did our engineering inspection and our walkthrough of the 23 units to figure out if we're going to keep or carve it out. And it ended up passing. We liked it a lot. But either way, we were able to get the whole project under contract for $10.35 million. Interest rates go through the moon. We end up delaying the index lock in order to figure out where it was going to settle in at. But meanwhile, because of the uncertainty, we were able to, and Dan's negotiating, we were able to negotiate about a $600,000 price reduction in order to secure our investor returns that we had underwritten. And then we index locked end of July at 5.11%, settled on a price reduction of $9.75 million, and then closed in August. Raised $4.6 million across 76 investors.
Real estate.
Okay, yeah.
And that's how you wrote it up, right? That was the plan when you and Dan wrote it up on how you're going to pick up.
This has been work for years.
Yeah, it was done, right? You started. Okay, so Dan, let's put in an offer on 113 units. Rate just went up like they never have before because the market has been on fire during that period of time. April of 2022 to June was just absolute nightmare. Nobody knew what the heck was going on.
Yeah,
I couldn't even imagine. Like, I have people that are stressing out on a one property as rates are going up. You guys were sitting on 136, and rates just went up 1%.
Yeah,
holy smokes,
it's a lot.
What were you thinking?
We're either brilliant or just the biggest morons in America.
And I love the fact that, that was pretty smart from Dan. Like you were right. Like when you have leverage, you're under contract. You got to make the deal work. You don't want to go back on the market on that many units with all those question marks. Nobody knew what was going on at that point.
And like his understanding of, because he's represented probably 1,000 of those sellers on the residential side.
Right.
And so he knows what's going through their head. And like we were talking through it and he's just like, this is where they're at. This is what they're thinking. Think about what alternatives they have to us, right? The soonest they will get a new buyer in is 30 to 45 days, right? They have to put it back on the market. They have to, sure, they can keep our earnest money, which is 100,000, right? But 100,000 to them on a project this size, just to put it back on the market, wait another 45 days just to bring in a new buyer who still has no idea what's going on in the debt market to see if they can raise the capital. And then the ripple effect of them having to work with their seller on the opposite side of this transaction, ask for an extension there in the hopes that this new buyer will come in who's dealing with all this stuff, right? So me being, I don't know, not in the real estate industry until freaking yesterday at this point in time. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
I didn't really understand that dynamic. And he knew it right away. There was zero hesitation, or he knew we had all the leverage.
Yeah.
Even though we're on the buy side.
See, and I think it's interesting that you said the residential commercial. There is some things that that are similar when it comes to negotiation, because when you have a family putting an offer on a house, it's like, dude, you got to have leverage. Until you're under contract, you have none.
Yeah.
The seller's making all the decision, but once you're under contract, then like that's
think about it. Like if you're buying my house, I have $200,000 of equity tied into my house because I bought in San Diego this is just random example, because I bought in San Diego 2017, right? The new house I'm buying is in insert cheaper state. I'm buying this awesome place. I'm putting $200K down, which is going to buy me, $1 million home, 20% down. It's going to be great, but it's contingent on this selling, right? And my seller in other state, right? They're like, yeah, we're agreed to terms, but they're not happy that the sale of their home is contingent on the sale of my home in an environment like this, right? So you as my buyer, like, I need you to come through, right? And if we need to negotiate a little bit, because I need you almost more than you need me.
Oh, 1,000%. At that point, like, you're hosed.
But as soon as you find that out, that's where you know who has the leverage. And you got to be confident enough to use that. And like, if you have to walk away, you have to walk away. But like, odds are in your favor if you understand the dynamic that's going on and who has the leverage. And that's something that I did not understand, being so green to the industry. And he did, because he's handled that exact scenario countless times.
Yep.
Right. It's just the only difference is me, the seller. I'm not buying a house in Nashville. They're transitioning to a commercial property, and taking the proceeds and 1031ing their investors into a new thing. And they have a time limit with a 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you love about, do you love multifamily syndication, or just something like, what do you want to do long term?
I love it enough.
Okay.
I was not put on earth to buy apartments.
Okay.
I can firmly
you
say
can
that.
attest. Yeah, that's not your dream.
But it's the means to an end, right? And what it does is it provides, human connections, challenging environment autonomy that I talk about, right? And the autonomy piece is oftentimes fueled by money. Can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you autonomy, right? You have like these, what was it? I think there's some, I read this article somewhere, but it's like it's like the top industries or careers with the highest like suicide rates are some of the most well paid. Right. For instance, like certain types of surgeons, or like
air traffic controllers.
Air traffic control. Like either way, but it's
deep deadliest cash.
but the point is, like, especially when it comes to like the surgeon types.
Yeah.
Highly educated, on a salary of 500, 600, depending what type of surgeon, right? But you're always on call. You're working an incredibly stressful job with very real things at stake, right? And you have zero autonomy, right? Not to say, I mean, those people do God's work, right, in saving lives, right? But there's a trade-off there.
1,000. Yeah.
Right. And one thing that I've learned real estate can provide, and granted, there's 1,000 ways to skin this cat, but for me, I've found real estate is the access to and the achievable nature of financial freedom through real estate, and that lower barrier to entry for a military guy like me is something I love, and it's a repeatable thing. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can rely on being a good person of integrity, a hard worker, and putting a great team around me to be successful. Like, I can do those things, right? And then once I achieve financial freedom, I'll keep doing real estate because I enjoy it, and it can build generational wealth for my kids and, kids one day, and like my family. Like, I'm getting ready to, have to provide for my parents, right? Like, this isn't a pursuit of my first Lamborghini. This is pursuit of making sure, my parents can live comfortably into their elder years and only have to worry about being grandma and grandpa, right? Sure, would sports cars be nice? Yeah, who doesn't want a sports car? But like, that's not the goal, right?
You're playing a different game.
I'm playing a different game, right? And personally, once I reach that point, I want to be high school football coach. I want to be my kid's t-ball coach. Like, I want to be maybe a volunteer firefighter.
You want that autonomy.
I want to be a volunteer firefighter, give back, right? That's what I want. Like, I have zero desire to grow this thing into a 100, 200 person massive corporation, build yourself a job just for the sake of taking it public, right? That's against that's not in line with my goals at all. Build it up big enough, as fast as possible, so I can step away and really like take care of what matters, But like, do I believe in this vehicle being the best vehicle to get there? 110%, right? For my skill set, my goals, my timeline, I don't think there's a better vehicle to get me there than real estate. And
you're proving it.
Trying to.
And you're proving it. Oh, you want stats? Hold on. Let me give you Morgan's stats since 2020. Let's talk about the military community and financial awareness.
Yeah.
I've heard this feedback a lot as far as preparedness for after the military.
Yeah.
You're about to transition to the next journey and accomplish that happiest Morgan life ever. What advice would you give to the young enlisted guys, the young officers? What advice would you give when it comes to setting up for life after?
You own your future, right? And people have to, I wish the military did a better job of training on this before it was time to get out, because you don't start the separation process until it's time to separate, right? And that's why you see a lot of the statistics that you see about veteran depression, suicide. A lot of that comes from people who don't have an identity outside the military. Like, if you ask who I am, I will tell you I'm Morgan, right? There's a lot of people you ask who they are. It's like, I am staff sergeant, blah, blah, blah. I am, petty officer, blah, blah, blah. I'm captain this, lieutenant that, right? Like, no, that's my job. That's my rank. I can go buy my rank at the next for $5. That's not who I am, right? And people don't get that until it's not necessarily too late, but it's hard to get caught up, right? One thing I tell all my students on the first day of class, I like to do these things called LT talks. It's like after I teach all the required material for the lecture that day, I like to talk about life and lessons learned and hopefully set themselves up a little bit better than, when I was, and just try to pay it forward. But the first LT talk I always start with is, no matter if you stay in for 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 20 years, 30 years, you will get out of the military one day.
Facts.
And you don't have to have the answer today, tomorrow, next year, but you need to start looking for it right away, right? And the sooner you start looking for it, finding out what you want to do afterwards, once again, it's not a throwing a dart, hitting a bullseye, and then running, right? It is a process of elimination, right? The sooner you start that process of elimination, the higher likelihood you will find something you like in time for whenever you get out. And the people who are getting out sooner, there's a little bit more pressure for you to find something sooner, right? And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by people and surrounded by entrepreneurs and people who invested in me to teach me that lesson. So when I got started in the military, my goal was always try to figure out how to replace my income. Right. But that's not a product of me being like, oh, I've always had this mindset. Like, no, like I had to see somebody and be impressed with somebody and look up to somebody who was doing that to want that for myself and then figure out how was I going to achieve that? Right. Like I started a software company in college with some buddies in a business we had no business being in. And I essentially...
You have a tendency to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I had no business doing this, but I did it anyway.
But we got this thing off the ground. We started this in 2015 and I was already in a delayed entry program for the military. So I left to go active duty, summer 2015, and they kept it going, obviously, because we had just started it. We had been doing it for like 6 months and it was like picking up traction and all this stuff, all this crazy stuff. They end up going in for like a Series A equivalent round, right? Meanwhile, I'm actually deployed. I've become dead weight to the company, right? This thing, I had no idea about real estate investing at this point in time. But as they go for the Series A round, they secured investors who were going to fill that gap. They wanted to clear the cap table, right? And I was a majority owner as a co-founder, but I was providing zero time, zero value, zero nothing to the company, right? So I had zero leverage, right? And so my options were either kill the company, kill my friendships, make them find new money with less stringent requirements on a timetable that I was not going to help achieve and risk them going under in an endeavor to do so, or walk away. And I was bitter, but I knew what I needed to do. And I figured, I did this once, I can do it again somehow. I don't know how, but we'll find it. And so in 2016, I walked away from that company. It's still around today. It's a 7-figure gross income software company now. I'm still on their About Us page, which is kind of cool, but that's my only tie to it, is the fact I'm on the website.
You're on the website?
That's kind of cool.
That's cool.
But I walked
There's
away.
no residual on him.
But like I missed out on a pretty significant exit buyout for the sake of saving my friendship and saving the company, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm proud of that decision. At the time, I was kind of bitter because I was pissed about the situation, how we had gotten to that point. But needless to say, I wasn't a part of the help or the problem. Well, I was a part of the problem because I wasn't doing anything. Like, I was deployed, right? My life was different than theirs. But I walked away, and ever since then, I was like, well, shoot, that was my passive income vehicle. And now I don't have one. But I still had that bug of like, how can I build passive income? And luckily, act of God, I found real estate at some point in time. And then through trial and error, I went through like wholesaling, didn't like that, went through single family homes, like that, but wasn't scalable.
It's not practical.
For what I wanted to do. Then I jumped into that 3-unit, which sucked. And that was the kick to the face that I needed to figure out like, hey, I can do more than I'm worth. Right. Like I was very limited, and I was hamstringing myself in my capacity because I grew up poor and because I had a government job and I didn't have much in savings. And after that was when I was like, dude, like, screw this. Like, these guys aren't that special. Like, they are, but they aren't. Like, I can do this. And that's when I started like trying to be intentional about like, how can I do big deals? Like, what is this onion made up of? And that's when I started keeping in touch with Dan, figuring out what his goals were. And then 2 or 3 years later of like only trying to learn and like build a network and like figure out like what this looks like, then we jumped in tail into 2020.
1,000 units under management.
Just under, but yeah.
Oh, I'm manifesting.
Manifesting, yeah. Hopefully,
next deal. Next deal we'll put you over.
Oh, next deal we'll eclipse that.
Okay, let's go ahead and we're gonna put LT Talks 6 months for him. You got 6 months. The next time you come back, I wanna hear 1,000 doors. No pressure, Dan.
No pressure.
No pressure. Morgan and Dan, no pressure. Holy. All of this by 31. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's do this. Easy. You wrote the plan exactly the way it was.
But I don't think it's much more achievable than, like, I don't think I've had success, and I'm proud of what we've done, but I haven't done anything. I don't think we've done anything insurmountable.
No.
The thing that I would say Dan and I have done better than other people is trusting, believing, like it sounds so cliche, but it's like believing in yourself. And so many people don't, like we talked about, like ownership, like owning your future, right? So many people stay in the military because they don't they don't know who they are beneath the uniform, right? It's like, I am gunnery sergeant this, I am lieutenant that, I am, captain this, right? Well, no. Because Lieutenant Hampel can't go do real estate. Lieutenant Hampel has to focus on this, but that's not who I am. That's just my job. But what does Morgan want? Well, Morgan wants human connections, challenging environment, autonomy. Lieutenant Hampel can't get that because he can only get 2 of those buckets.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, it took me a while. Like, I didn't believe in myself until I got to that 3 unit. And even then, it wasn't like an overnight thing. I was like, all right, well, I want to start learning about this bigger stuff. And then you start getting a little bit of momentum, and then all of a sudden that ball starts rolling, and it just grows and grows and grows and goes. And then also we relied on people. Like, yeah, you have to have a certain level of competence and smart. Like, I'm not saying I'm stupid, but my background is not in real estate whatsoever. There's zero crossover besides just the generic problem solving or like critical thinking, right? But people have those skills.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating? You talked about connection and network, and I was really curious. Like, how did you end up? When we met, I'm like, holy shit, he's doing, he did big projects, but I didn't know about the 1 unit. I didn't know about the 3 units. So it's like you took action, you learned.
It was a process elimination.
That's it. Like, hey, this doesn't work for me. I single family, that's too long a game. I want to cut the multi-unit, that's not going to work for me. I want the bigger scope. And then you experiment with different things, found the right people to surround yourself with that were your advisors. And a lot of crazy shit happened. Like, I would freak out. I got to be honest with you. As a money person, I'd be like, oh shit, we just lost 600,000 of our capital raise.
Yeah.
We've never done a deal before.
No, we have half the time to raise.
You know what? Why don't we go and improve the 18 units? We'll just throw 100K at this. Risk and reward.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? The only way you're making those types of decisions is when you believe in yourself and Dan.
Yeah.
So freaking cool. Now you say, like, I haven't done much. Like, there's people in real estate that aren't working on these types of projects.
Yeah.
So I think the cool part for me is, like, sharing this story makes it very tangible to say, life after whatever your journey is, whether you're a firefighter or, different branch of the military, like, life after, we all live different lives. We have different journeys. Think about California right now. Affordability is a huge issue. How do you solve affordability? Well, all of us need side hustles right now.
Yeah.
In this day and age where you have access to the internet, I think it's viable. Start educating yourself on different aspects that you can do. In real estate, I agree with you. I think it's one of the safest because it's tangible. It's real property. Why not explore it? Do you ever is there another asset class that you're a fan of that you dabble in?
Well, yeah, boutique hotels.
Okay, talk to me about the sexy.
Yeah, so our newest project right now is a boutique hotel downtown San Diego, Prohibition era restoration project. We're going to own or operate the hotel, build out a cold shell downstairs for the restaurant and ground floor. The thing I like about this, there's a lot of California legislation that is cracking down on short-term rentals. So it's providing an increasing value to the hotel space. But the nice thing is that the establishment of short-term rentals with Airbnb, VRBO has made barrier to entry for operators like us much more achievable because outreach is much easier now. I don't have to have a Marriott flag or a Hilton flag or a Embassy Suites flag in order to get eyes. I just need to be on Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, create our own website. There is a means, just like you're saying, in the internet age, there is a means to get eyes and visibility to your project without being tied to one of these massive groups, right? So the nice thing is about our project, and that I'm super excited for about ours specifically, but I mean, this translates to boutique hotels across the country that are seeing this type of legislation crackdown on specifically short-term rentals, is if you have a actually zoned and entitled hotel, you can use the Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com platforms to build your credibility, your track record, your ratings, your reputation, your reviews, but you don't need to rely on the franchising of a massive corporation, right? So what we're doing with this hotel is, in San Diego, you have between 4,000 and 5,000 hotel rooms, period, in downtown San Diego, massive. The bulk of which are all your typical 2-queen, single king style studio, short-term only, right? Not suitable for long-term. What we're doing with our hotel, we could build out probably around 20 of those style rooms, but then we would be competing with those Hilton, Embassy Suites, Hyatts, whatnot, all these, club rewards, all the stuff, right? So in an endeavor to not compete with them, we are in our own niche where our hotel is only going to be between 8 and 11 units, and it's all going to be high occupancy. So it's 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, multiple bathrooms, full kitchens, living room, and it's going to be a whole experience in itself. So it's going to run and operate as an Airbnb, as a VRBO, but we're zoned, monitored, tracked, and taxed just as like any hotel would be.
And it's a less risky. You're not waiting for political climate to change up and down.
So if anything, the bigger the hamstring on short-term rentals, it's better for us, right? And so you're seeing I think a new push towards boutique hotels and taking over some of these mom and pop hotels that haven't joined the 21st century of the automatic online kind of property management, where you can do virtual check-in, virtual check-out, and then just have cleaners come and go, all based on automatic scheduling. There's a new wave coming in that boutique hotel space. And this is our first project of this type. And depending on the success and how this goes, which we're confident in, probably won't be our last.
Well, you know what the cool thing is? This is going to be done in 2025, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have you back because you're going to be giving us updates on this project. So,
and we'll walk it live.
What's up?
We'll walk it live.
Oh, we're gonna do. I was not joking with you. We're gonna do I want to do this podcast on location. We'll do it that day with you and Dan, because I'm sure he'll be here at that point, right?
Yeah.
Grand opening.
Exactly.
We're manifesting this because we're going to go back. We're going to go forward a year from now, replay this episode as they're opening. That's how this thing works. We're going to do the buildup. We'll do the buildup. Who do you want to thank before we wrap up? I know you've talked a lot about your parents and what a great son you are, because you're thinking about so much more than Lambo, parents. Awesome.
It's, who would I want to thank? So, I absolutely will thank, my parents. It's growing up in the environment that we did was hard. I wouldn't wish it on somebody, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Right? It's seeing my parents push and persevere, and nothing crazy bad happened. It was just hard times and a hard economy. We were very impacted by the .com crash, and then 2008 hit some really, really hard times. But there was never there's no give up, right? And seeing that as a kid, I did not understand that, right? It was actually I'll tell a quick story that this is become a core memory for me in my journey to financial freedom. And I actually called my dad and stepmom probably probably like a month or two ago to see if they remembered this, because I like had to share it with them. My dad wasn't doing too good, and I like had to tell him and get it off my chest. But I was 8 years old, 9 years old. We couldn't afford to go on any vacations. The only vacation we would go to is 3 hours north from Minneapolis, is Duluth, Minnesota. It's right on Lake Superior. And we'd stay at this place called Lake Breeze. Lake Breeze was like a kind of a dump, right? It was like a cabin, and they had a playroom with like foosball, and they had like about as regular as a pool as you could get, right? And it wasn't even like, nothing was nice, but this place was like heaven for me. Like, I thought this place was like the be all end all, like looked forward to going to Lake Breeze every year for 4th of July. Like, this was heaven on earth. Like, I loved that freaking pool and playing foosball with like, I don't know. I loved it. Right. Because I was like the only vacation. I was like, we're going on vacation. Like, you have friends who are going to Florida, Hawaii. They're coming back. Their hair's braided and like tan and whatnot. I was like, well, I can't do that shit. Well, I got Lake Breeze. Right. And I loved that. And we had a family freaking piggy bank for Lake Breeze. It was a shoebox that we duct taped, and we called it our Lake Breeze box. And we would put money in there to save up for Lake Breeze. And I was a kid, and I would find like pennies, quarters, whatever I had on the ground, and I'd put in the Lake Breeze box, and I'd contribute. That was my contribution to us going to Lake Breeze for 4th of July. One day I got home and I went to go put some money that I had found in the Lake Breeze box, and the box was gone. We always kept it in the kitchen. And I was like, that's weird. Like, where's it at? My sister was home, like watching me, and my parents were gone. And I started like getting like very concerned. Like, where did it get stolen? Like searching through the house. Like, I ended up in my parents' bedroom, and I found it in their closet, like ripped open and empty. And I was like devastated is an understatement. Like, I saw like my dreams, my annual dreams of going to Lake Breeze just ripped from my hands in that box being cut open and empty. And I was crying. I was visibly upset. And my parents were gone. I was just like, I see them start to come home, and we have this memory is just like ingrained in me. We have a split level house. So you walk in, you can go upstairs, you go downstairs. And my parents get home, and I'm standing on top of the stairs holding this duct tape shoebox empty. And I look at my dad and my stepmom, and they are on the landing from the front door with groceries. And it did not hold any value to me at that point. I was 8, 9 years old. I was just like, you stole from the Lake Breeze box. And I was so angry. And they're like sitting me down. They're trying to tell me, it's like, hey, like, we needed the money to go buy groceries. And like, I couldn't comprehend at that age, like, why can't you just use other money? Like, this is Lake Breeze money. We do this. This is the only vacation we do. Like, why do we need to use this money for food? And like, they did their best to like explain the value of food versus vacation. And like, we were at the point where we had to literally take this change to a Coinstar to get it for cash to go to the grocery store. And I was a kid, and I just like could not get it. I could not understand why that decision was made. And I can't imagine the pain that I caused them, because I was just at that point, like, I had cried and I was angry, and I was just like thinking back on that as an adult now, the amount of hurt that I caused them, the amount of pain and like sadness and regret that they had gotten to that point where they had to take Lake Breeze money to buy groceries. Right. And I called my parents and told them how much like this was a core memory of me, and I wanted to apologize. And obviously it's like, they tell me I have nothing to apologize for, but like, I never want to have that conversation with my kid where I have to take something that he loves so much, even if it's insignificant in our eyes, to have to do something like that and put them through that sort of pain for a staple. Like, they had to do that. Right. And but who knows? Like if I don't learn that lesson, then I'm thankful for it. Right. At the time, as a kid, I was furious, but it's become a core memory for me and a driving force for why I want financial freedom for stability and to be able to provide so I don't have to have those types of conversations with my kids. And so I'm thankful for them for pushing through those days.
Holy shit.
I didn't expect to tell that story today, but yeah.
And you talked to your dad about it?
Yeah, I called him like 2 months. He had a pretty major stroke recently and was like not doing well. And I wanted to make sure I told him and thanked him for that because we weren't sure if he was going to make it.
How's he doing?
He's doing better now, thank God.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's stable now. They think they found the source of the clots. He has to go back in for surgery probably in the next month or so. But he's like stable now in a much better spot. But I'd kept that to myself for a very long time. And I don't know why, but it took almost losing my dad to really come to terms with that memory and making sure that I thanked them for that.
Morgan, I think your parents are proud to have you as a kid.
I appreciate that.
It's crazy, man.
It was definitely tough, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
I mean, as a parent, providing for your kids
is all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in order to do so, having to take away something that meant
everything
to me. Like that was our only vacation. That was like, I looked forward to it.
Oh, that had to break their hearts.
Yeah. I can't even imagine having to be on the other side of that table. And just to think like when I was talking to him about it, there's like, Morgan, you have nothing to apologize for.
Seriously.
You're a kid. And like, I understand that, but also like, it was like, it's me. It's like, I get it. I don't need to apologize as a kid. And like, you don't know, you learn so much as you don't.
Did you know what I learned about you? Like it just talks about your heart, who you are as a human being.
Yeah.
Like that's what blows my mind that you, it's so hard sometimes to be vulnerable because it just shows like it's fear. Yeah. You know, it's hard to be honest, you know, and since we brought it, I didn't expect us to go here. Do you know what I'm trying to do for the boys? You know, I have 3 boys. I'm just trying to get to know them, like who they are, what they want in life. What do they want to explore? What do they want to learn? You know, like if I were sitting here, Luke, 31 years old, said what you said, I'd be blown away. That's awesome, man. All right. Well, on that note, I'm so glad we got an opportunity to get to know you. That I've never. We've done a lot of firsts. I don't think I've ever balled up on an episode before, but it is what it is. Like, you know what? Connection is everything. And bro, I am so grateful that I've gotten a chance to get to know you. And you know, this just getting to know you better today just makes. Like, you're an incredible person. I just really, really appreciate that, you know, you're a friend.
Likewise, brother.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you.